So we are going through I Am That by Sri Nisargadatta Maharaj, some question and answers, and we're in a section really on, let's see, go back and get the heading of the section here, appearances and reality. And this
Maharaj,
whole,
will you mute us, please?
yes. There we go. All right. So everybody's muted, but of course, goes without saying, I'll say it without saying it. You can definitely unmute yourself to ask or comment or say anything. This is just so that doorbells, chickens, and goats and stuff in your living room won't make any noise in the background. So he's talking about a world that the real experience, the true experience of being, of living, does not involve any sense of a past or a future. And when you remove past and future as merely concepts of mind, that we live in this eternal now, which is God, the I am, and we get our sense of being from that unchanging moment. And ultimately we identify with the moment. I don't know what page we're on because I have PDF. Anybody know what page we're on? We're on the question is a causeless world entirely beyond my control.
In this book, it's page number 39, Swamiji.
Okay, page 39.
Okay.
All right. Someone texted. That's why I just suddenly went into that space. So this notion of past and future being purely of the mind, that you live in an eternally present moment, that through the moment you see what eternity means. At the moment itself, actually, if you think about it, is transcendent to time. The moment is really, there is no time in the moment, and there's no change in the moment. So actually the moment, this isness, is the absolute. It is the container for everything that happens. And actually Sri Nisargadatta in another place we'll probably come to before long says, somebody asks him, what are you? Asks him personally, what are you? And he says, I'm just a place where things happen. And so you can see, if you identify with the moment, if you identify with that unchanging aspect of yourself, you do in fact experience the whole world within you, that you are a place where everything happens. You are a container of all change, unrepeating, but you are utterly unaffected by all of it ultimately. And so our questioner here is quite disturbed with this idea of no cause and effect. He's thinking, gosh, nothing makes any sense without cause and effect. And his current question, he says, a causeless world is completely beyond my control. If there's no cause, how does anything change? And this, comes from a question that comes from us living in mind, in active mind, that our sense of I is constructed from our past alone. And it's held in the mind, in the changing. And so we hold an idea of ourself that's always in the world of changing. And that changing is an unrepeated, constant flow of change. And so the mind has constructed this notion of cause and effect, and the ideas of past and future. It gets, as you remember, your sense of past is really all of your attachments, right? All of your memories are things that you've grabbed out of the moment and you didn't want them to go away. And so you shared your immortality with them by tucking them into your memory, by holding on to them so that they can last beyond their flow, beyond their time. And so your memory, your whole idea of the past is constructed purely to hold your attachments. It's your big purse, the big purse for stuffing all of your attachments in as you go along in this world. And so what that does then, having all of these attachments in memory, when a sensation comes to you in the present moment, it brings up associated memories with that sensation or that piece of information or whatever it is in the moment that rakes up those things, and they become a lens over your ability to see. They become a way of giving you a particular perspective on the moment that's based on attachments, based on your past. And since that is a collection of things that are not in the present moment, they're coming from the past, they produce in you a sense of need or a sense of lack. Like the smell of pizza brings up the thought of pizza, which if you don't have a piece of pizza in your hand, now you need pizza. And so that sense of lack constructs your whole perspective of future. You need a future in order to plan, in order to manifest your missing attachment in the present moment. And so you construct a future in order to enable your desires. So your past is your attachments. When looked through at the present moment, it disturbs the purity of the moment and creates a sense of lack. And then your future then is your desires. The sense of future was created in order to hold your desires. So you've got a purse on the left side holding your attachments from the past, and you've got a backpack on your right side holding your desires for the future. So you're all weighted down, walking around like a double-humped camel, because you won't set these things down, and you can't live life. You can't be free. You can't be eternal, because you're trapped between your backpack and your purse, and you can't move. And so we're trying to set all these things down. And in doing so, we have to understand that the world doesn't have cause. In another place, Sri Nisargadatta says, what you call cause and effect is merely repetition. As we know in probabilities, there's always a certain amount of chance that something's not going to produce its effect, even if it's done it 1,000 times in a row. And so that's enough to cancel the idea, just make it a working generalization more than a fact, as it is. So a causeless world is entirely beyond my control, the questioner says. Maharaj, on the contrary, a world of which you are the only source and ground is fully within your power to change. What is created can always be dissolved and recreated. All will happen as you want it, provided that you really want it. Right? So your changes of perspective normally of the moment will create a world of change for you. There's lots of examples of that. And if you do experiments on your own, you'll see some of them, that really each of us contains a bubble, a universe within our mind that we live in. And each one of us has our own. And there's enough, we are, like that dish towel example that I talked about, where you kind of trap the dish towel around the ends of each of your fingers with a rubber band of ignorance. And you've got 5 little fingers, little nubs with rubber bands around them. Those are 5 individual minds or manifested jivas, jivas manifested as individuals in this world. But that dish towel, if you were to pull the fingers out, would be a single dish towel. So we all have a single mind, a single soul, a single Atman. That is one without a second, but we, through ignorance, it's identified itself with a body mind, and with it has borrowed a small section of the universal mind. And so, like the dish towel is permeable, meaning that things can go through it. Our minds also, when we come closer together, they can build a synergy. There's some bleeding between minds. And actually in Raja Yoga, Vivekananda says that's how one reads minds, that reading someone's mind is not you going into their mind. It's you stilling your mind so absolutely calmly that their thoughts, the waves of their own thoughts within their portion of the universal mind, actually bleed through the fabric and ripple the waters of your own mind, and you can then hear their thoughts, understand their thoughts. And this is a practice that's laid out for why would I even tell you that? Why would we be interested in that? But there is this notion that reading minds is a natural effect of us being ultimately one without a second. And that is even one more way that it could be experienced if you wanted to go through the time of training your mind to that level of stillness, which would be a great thing, not so that you could read the awful things going on in other people's minds, but so that you could, having even that stillness of your own mind, in that you're going to get lots of residual knowledge that you didn't even realize that you had. as the mind begins to calm, as you get that sweetness, that wonderful tranquility in the heart, that wonderful sense of bliss, of the presence of the divine, when you begin to move your sense of I out of that sense of change, out of the mind, if you stop defining yourself from imagined things from the past and start letting yourself be spontaneous in the moment, then you begin to understand what you are when nothing else is telling you what you are. But that's a very rare thing. As soon as that mind gets activated, it starts telling you what you are. It starts telling you what you like, what you want, and what you should do, and all of those things. And you listen and are told, instructed by an ignorant mind what you are. But in that calmness of mind, many things happen. You become aware of the reality of eternity. You experience eternity. You know what it is personally, because you realize that you're sitting in it, that you've been witnessing it for your whole life. You understand this notion of infinity to yourself. You know that you have no boundary. When you try and describe yourself from the inside out, it's very difficult to do because there's no boundaries in the self. And when you try and describe yourself from the inside out, it's hard to say even your first sentence. You know, pretty much this is what Descartes tried to do. You know, and of course, in his one famous statement that started all of Western philosophy, he got it backwards, which is kind of humorous. You know, he came up with the idea, I think, therefore I am. But really, it's the other way around. I am, therefore I think. You know, the other way around. But you all of this residual knowledge. This is the one thing that's kind of my topic du jour, because it's a wonderful thing. You know, spiritual life is like a series of bowls that you live in. Your mind creates these bowls, these states of being, where it collects several thoughts together and creates a state, creates a bowl, and we live in these bowls sometimes. These bowls hold our whole world sometimes. And when you're in the bottom of a bowl and you look around, you think that's all there is because you can't see over the lip of it. And you think you know what you know, and you can't imagine any knowledge that's not inside the bowl. It just doesn't seem like it could be. And yet one of the first things when you have a split second, it could be a split hair of a second, where the mind calms, and suddenly you're aware of what's beyond the lip of your own bowl. And all this wonderful infinite wisdom is spontaneously available to you as part of yourself, as yourself. Not even a part. Wisdom is what you are. And so it's hard for us to see because we live in these bowls. And when we read these incredible truths, our first reaction is like, what? Whatever. How could that possibly be? And yet, if you do the work and you don't have to realize God to find out that these things are true. You just do enough of the work to where it presents distinct possibilities to you. You know, you'll get these flashes of insight. You'll get these flashes of understanding where you'll just be sitting there like, oh my God, how did I know that? I didn't even know I knew that. But you know that it came from within you. It's the feeling is that you've always known it, right? And that's one of the great things about the Vedanta to me, and studying it over the 20 years when I first got into it. And I was reading like the Eternal Companion and these wonderful books. I remember telling Philip, who was there at that time in my life, I remember telling him, I was like, God, you know, I feel every time I sit down and read these scriptures, I feel like somebody has gone into my own head and picked out all of my aha moments that I've had through my life, organized them into a beautiful essay, and then gave them back to me. And that's what the Vedanta always seems like to me. It's just this collection of things that you've always known, but you haven't been able to give them form. You haven't been able to actually express them and to create a full philosophy out of it. And Vedanta goes in, grabs those things, puts them in a wonderful order and says, here, this is what you meant. And you're like, well, absolutely right. That's totally what I was thinking. So, all right. So a causeless world. He says, on the contrary, a world in which you are the only source and ground is fully within your power to change. What is created can always be dissolved and recreated. All will happen as you want it, provided you really want it. Because this moment, if we step into our world of mind at this moment, where we do have cause and effect, you can see that the cause and effect is really just constructed based on what you decide to store in there. But this moment that you're in right now is the sum total of every desire you've ever had. The sum total of all of your desires have presented you with your observation of this moment. And so you have to know, are you in a good space? Are you content? Are you happy? Are you fulfilled? Is life good for you? Well, if not, then it's time to look at your desires in this moment. What are your desires? And it's time to rearrange them. maybe it's time to get rid of them, and let the moment be as the universe has created it, rather than the moment being what you've created it to be. And so this is that non-doership. This is returning to our infinite knowledge, which is in an unchanging moment, and to establish ourselves in the heart, observing this moment from the absolute, as it were, from the shore of mind, as it were, so that we're not creating any more disturbance in mind. And we begin to see. And in that, you understand that this world is created fresh in each moment by you, because the world you live in is your own mind. The whole world that you live in is contained within your mind. And that is utterly changeable. Utterly changeable. Questioner says, all I want to know is how to deal with the world's sorrows. Maharaj, you have created them, right? They're not given to you to deal with. You created them out of your own desires, out of your own fears. You deal with them. you made them. You have to deal with them. There's not a universal rule for how to deal with them. You made them, and each person has made their own specific set of sorrows and struggles in their moment, based on their desires, right? Based on how you perceive yourself to be. All is due to your having forgotten your own being, right? You've forgotten what you are. You've forgotten what you are, and you've started listening to the mind, which is just gathering sensations from the senses. You've listened to the mind's interpretation of that and taken that on as your identity, instead of going the other direction, feeling from the inside out. The sense of being is first, So your first thing is I am. And the next thing is that you realize that in that moment, you're infinite. You can do anything. You can be anything. You can say anything, in that next moment. So whatever you put on that I am is going to be a weight of some sort, unless you do the little mantras that Vivekananda gives us. I'm free. I'm bliss. I'm loved by the divine moment. That this is the reality of your moment. It's not what you're feeling. It's not what you're thinking. It's not what your environment is. Your real nature is this infinite isness, infinitely wise, infinitely bliss. And so this is the motivation. He says, you've created all of your problems out of your own desires and fears. You deal with them. All is due to you having forgotten your own being. Having given reality to the picture on the screen, you love its people and suffer for them and seek to save them. It is just not so. You must begin with yourself. There is no other way. Work, of course. There is no harm in working. So he says, he's bringing up that movie idea again, that you've ceased to see the white screen. When you walked into the theater, the screen was just a big white screen sitting there. And you took a chair and you sat there and you were completely unaffected by that white screen. That white screen had no troubles. It had no story. It had no people. It had no plot. There was nothing. So you were just left to yourself. But then that color started flashing on the screen, and your mind resolved it into people. and your ears took their stories and you've resolved it into a show. And now you're all worried. Oh my gosh, are they going to stay together? Oh, is that boat going to sink? Oh, is that a ghost? Suddenly you're involved. And through the power of that hypnotization, that movie can make you cry. It can make you laugh. It can make you sad. It can make you joyful. It can give you hope or ruin your hope. And the whole time, the reality is nothing but a white screen. And so when you get it, when that movie starts going, your first job as a moviegoer is delusion. You have to forget that the white screen is always there, unchanging. You have to pay attention only to the changing, only to the colors. And Maharaj here is saying, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Always remember, enjoy the movie, no problem. Enjoy the movie, but never forget the unchanging white screen behind it. Never forget that it's a projection, that it's not real. And that way you can sit through the whole horror flick without having to put the popcorn box over your head, So this is the way that we live this life. We watch this life and understand always that there is an absolute reality behind it that is unchanging, and that our mind projects consciousness, the light of consciousness. The light of consciousness projected on mind. And if we project it through a lens that sees me and mine, which means identity with a particular body and a particular mind, that lens will then begin to tell a story. It'll become a movie, and your life goes on. So just keep in mind that it just isn't so. What you're looking at is not as it seems. And you can duck out of the theater for a moment, grab a breath, give a chuckle, and go back in and start again. A questioner responds, your universe seems to contain every possible experience. The individual traces a line through it and experiences pleasant and unpleasant states. This gives rise to questioning and seeking, which broaden the outlook and enable the individual to go beyond his narrow, self-created world, limited and self-centered. This personal world can be changed in time. The universe is timeless and perfect. All right, so not much of a question there. It's kind of his read on what Maharaj has said so far. It's interesting, and Maharaj answers, my own feeling is that my spiritual development is not in my hands. Making one's own plans and carrying them out leads nowhere. I just run in circles around myself. When God considers the fruit to be ripe, he will pluck it and eat it. Whichever fruit seems green to him will remain on the world's tree for another day. So it's this is the beauty of the Vedanta to me, is that ultimately all of us ripen and fall off the tree. God eats us all. And that it happens as a natural process. If this world was real as we see it, then the process wouldn't be guaranteed, but it's not real. We are the only real thing in our universe. And that knowledge will consistently be with you. That's why, we talk about this world being a manifestation of God, which in effect means this world is scripture, a three-dimensional livable scripture. And the way to read this scripture, to be set free, is with attention. So attention is the means for reading life. Pay attention to everything going on within you. The attention doesn't go to what's going on outside of you. That's projection. That's unreal. But your attention stays on itself, deep within you. In there, you don't let yourself get pulled into the story on the screen. You're constantly aware of the screen, of the infinity of the screen. And in that, all of that residual knowledge that's available to you that you don't know of because of distraction of the senses, then that becomes spontaneously available to you. And it's a rich and a full experience of being, a very profound sense of just sitting. And in that space, the beauty of it is that there is no need for anything more. You delight in the profundity of the moment, the profundity of existence, considering what it could possibly be, the infinity of everything it represents and projects. And you just little things begin to amaze you. You know, you sit there and move your finger and you're like, what in the world? What in the world are we doing? And so this gives us a great sense of release from not being the doer. You know, as soon as we get into that quiet space, we understand just what he's saying here. My own feeling is that my spiritual development is not in my hands. It's a matter of surrender. Right? All spiritual growth is simply successful surrendering. It's not that you've constructed anything, not that you've composed anything or attained anything. That's the wrong way of seeing it. If you're doing that, stop that immediately. You're just building an egoistic devotee is what you're doing. And so stop doing that and understand that every bit of growth you've ever enjoyed has been the result of a surrender, a result of letting go of something, not a grabbing onto something. And so this is how we find that silence inside, is constantly letting go. Not this, not this. What is the one most important thing? You know, who is it that's looking? Who is it that's asking questions? Who is it that's sensing the God's love? Where is all of this? Maharaj, oh, questioner. Oh, that was the question. My own development was not in my. Oh goodness, I read those things completely wrong, you guys, and nobody said anything to me. The first one was Maharaj talking. I took it as M. I'm so used to reading the gospel. If it says M, I don't think Maharaj. I think, oh, it's M. Oh, so Maharaj says, you think God knows you? Even the world he does not know. Questioner, yours is a different God. Mine is different. Mine is merciful. He suffers along with us. Maharaj, you pray to save one while thousands die. And if all stop dying, there will be no space on the earth. So this is why it's very important when you pray for somebody, don't pray a specific prayer for them. Always lay them in the presence of Mother or the Divine and say, please do what's best for this person. Because your particular prayer might be just a horrendous suffering to them, you know. So always just lift it up to Mother in a loving concern, like you would a broken toy to your dad. Here, take it, fix it. You don't tell him how to fix it. You just give your dad your toy and say, fix it. And then he does what's necessary, or your mom. And so spiritual life is like that. Recognize your shortcomings, recognize something that's not working in your understanding, and just sit and surrender it to Mother to say, here, fix this for me. And that's how it happens. That's how we grow. So this idea of God not knowing you, does that mean God doesn't care? God's, separate from us? It's not that at all. You are that. What is there for God to care for? There's one without a second. So you've broken him up in pieces, and now you want to be concerned with how he feels about each of the pieces. He doesn't see the pieces. You made them up. They're part of your story. So God is intimate with you. God is love itself, and that's expressed simply by being, just by your isness. That's the grace of God, quote, knowing you. He is existing in you, through you. He is the one actually experiencing your life. God is the one who's watching your thoughts, that witness that you identify with. It's not you, the lucky little watcher. it's God who is the hearer of your thoughts, and it's God who's the feeler of your senses. It's God who is the experiencer of your emotions. So you can't get more intimate than that. You can't get more known than that. It's not. You can't even say that it's known, because he's the source and end together. He is the isness of you. And so you're giving it a name and pinching it off from the whole. That's the only mistake. But you can still know that God exists. It's you that's pinched off a little world for your own that don't exist. You're a in truth, you're a constipation. a constant, you're a constipation to the flow of reality. Instead of letting things flow, you keep pinching, grabbing, and holding, pinching, grabbing, and holding, pinching, grabbing, and holding. And you wonder why you're a mess. It's because it's better just to stand and watch the stream flow. You know, don't try and collect it. Don't take pictures of it. Questioner, I'm not afraid of death. My concern is with sorrow and suffering. My God is a simple God and rather helpless. He has no power to compel us to be wise. He can only stand and wait. Maharaj, if you and your God are both helpless, does it not imply that the world is accidental? And if it is, the only thing you can do is to go beyond it. Right? Go beyond it. Don't try and fix it. Your errant understanding created it. Ignorance created your world. And then with ignorance, you're going to go in and try and fix it. He said, no, don't do that. Give up on it. Let go of it. Walk away from these ideas. Question everything. And remember you're free. Remember that you're not a body. Let it starve, let it eat. What does it matter to you? The mind, let it be in one state or another state. What does it matter to you? That nothing can touch you. You are the container. You're not the thing itself. So you are the place where things happen within you. So we're going on to a new section here. Does anybody have a comment they want to make about what we've talked about so far, or a question or clarification? All right.
Well, the comment you made about, reading others' minds, and that I know you were maybe talking about humans, but that applies to non-humans. I mean,
it would apply to any form, any living form.
Right. I mean, and the dreams too. I mean, not just the. I think you can read other people's dreams too, not just their awake thoughts. But I know it might sound crazy, but I've experienced it.
Yeah, no, Vivekananda would agree with you for sure. I don't form opinions on those things because I just have zero experience with those things. But according to the scriptures, according to Raja Yoga, that's actually a natural ability that we have before we lose it by distraction, by a noisy mind. But that in silent mind, you have access to all of those things. And yes, that would include the dream world, interestingly enough. Yeah. Interestingly enough, I mean, if you think about it, you should be able to change characters in your dream at will, because they are all equally you. And so you should be able to do that. And probably if you had control, which is what we're trying to learn, well, I don't know if I want to frame it that way, but if you could still your mind, which would require you letting go a sense of identity with the particulars stored in the mind, if you could let go of that, then even in this life, you can be anybody. They talk about great sages are able to move into other people's bodies in order to experience the karmas, to burn the karmas. So they can use more than one body to burn through their karma in order to get to their enlightenment, their full understanding. But those things, what to do with them? So I just kind of have a little box of like cool stuff that I don't experience, but I wouldn't be surprised if it happens because somebody has said so. That's where all of that stuff exists for me. And it's important not to go chasing after those things, because if you see them as an answer to something, you'll suffer. It will stunt your growth. So as true or as those things may be, and as many spiritual gifts and seemingly supernatural, although Swamiji won't let us use that word for those things, because he says everything is natural.
Right, everything's just normal and natural, and it's not. I mean, we like you said, if we relax and are silent, the Lord, knows what's possible.
Yes, absolutely. And we've probably experienced it to some degree and not known it. You know, we've all had that person get on the bus and sit down next to us where you're just like, wow, you don't know what it is, but something's telling you, you know, be careful, or, you know, don't talk to this guy, or this guy's really bad news. You know, we've all had those intuitive bleed overs when we get up close to folks, especially on the bus. Any big city bus is great for that experience on there. So, all right, well, let's jump into section 15 here. The Gyani, the knower, the knower. Questioner: without God's power, nothing can be done. Even you would not be sitting here and talking to us without him. Maharaj: all is his doing, no doubt. Now, this is interesting because Gyani, you know, has the reputation of being godless, that it's the way to realization without God. But here we see that Maharaj, he doesn't hold that idea. It's the nature of the nature of the divine would be same in either one. It'd be the manifestation, or the what would be different? The attribute list would be different between a Gyani and a Bhakti, but that which they're describing is still the same, right? And so both paths end in the divine. So he says, all is his doing, no doubt. What is to me? What is it to me, since I want nothing? Right? So that's the ability of to be present, is to want nothing, to see nothing necessary to change, to have no resistance to what is. Right? Resistance is ego. Resistance is blindness. Resistance is not seeing. What is it to me, since I want nothing? What can God give me or take away from me? What is mine, and what is mine, even when God was not. Of course, it is a very tiny little thing, a speck, the sense I am, the fact of being. This is my own place. Nobody gave it to me. The earth is mine. What grows on it is God's. Yeah. Here comes Bindu. So he's really talking about a sense of detachment here, in the sense that he needs nothing. So he's not invested in occurrences, in happenings. He's not invested in circumstances and conditions. He accepts them all. And he doesn't get programmed by his past to have an expectation about a future, you know, so that there's no need, there's no want born in it. He accepts it all, and sees its perfection from the unchanging perspective of not body and not mind. And see, this is one of those pieces of residual, I don't know if that's the right word, but this residual knowledge that comes to your notice when your mind quiets. One of them is the perfection of all things. In ego state, you can never see the perfection of the world. There's a constant need of change in the world, a need for improvement. But from the spiritual self, from the I that's not attached to conditions and attributes, then one of the things that floats up that you become aware of is the intrinsic perfection. God is everywhere present and always perfect. It's always acceptable. If you're a body, if you think you're a body, that will never be true. It'll always be too hot or too cold. Something will always be aching. Some arm will always have to be moved. Some lump has to be straightened. So for the body, the moment is never perfect. For the mind, the moods that come and go, the desires that rise and fall, the attractions, the aversions, you know, the wants and the don't wants, all of those things prevent you. So this world, this moment, is never perfect for the body, very rarely perfect for the mind, but to the soul, to the self, the container of all things. It's always in balance, it's always in harmony, it's always perfect.
Nobody gave it to me.
All right.
It's not real.
All right. So this is where he's talking about The earth is mine. What grows on it is God's. And that's the statement. You have the right to work, but not to its results. Right? The results are just part of the whole. They don't exist while you're working. Right? And when they happen, you're unconcerned. Your work in this world is not in what you're doing, but how you're doing it. Everything should be infused with love. Everything should be infused with wisdom. Those are your being. Those are your nature. And so for a life that's fulfilling and a life that is full of content, has to be built on love and wisdom. Those are your focus always. And so they are how you do whatever it is you do in this world. And they will bring about, they will allow you to continue in, let's say it this way, they will allow you to continue in your sense of peace and well-being. If you have interests in results, you're going to have to move into the future. You're not going to be in the present anymore. If you're working for results, you've left the present and you've established camp somewhere in the future. And you imagine that it's someday in the future, everything's going to be great and perfect and wonderful. But you'll end up dying working for that which never arrives because you're living in ego space. The ego space is flipped backwards. This moment is perfect. My work is worship. My work is in response to that perfection, in service to that perfection, in gratitude to that perfection, in wonder of that perfection. Whatever it is, it arises, it's done. But it's not egoistic. There's no planning. There's no projecting. There's no results. There's no investment. There simply is doing what you are. So the questioner, did God take the earth on rent from you? How can you say that what grows on the earth is not yours? Did God rent it? Is he renting the earth and therefore it's yours? Maharaj, oh my goodness, this is beautiful. Maharaj says, God is my devotee and did all of this for me. This is a wonderful ideal if you can actually live it. This would be beautiful. I had a little bit of this sensation. I shared it when we had our last retreat, our fall retreat last year, or this year's fall retreat. When I was up in the mountains there, and we went out on a meditation hike as a group in the afternoon, and I wandered off the trail, I don't know, 100 feet into this grove of aspen that were bright, and I mean bright yellow, and the white trunks, and the wind was blowing, and it was sort of cloud covered, overcast, but the sun was glinting through occasionally and hitting those leaves, and they were fluttering in the way that they do. It's unbelievably beautiful. And I sat there and I just watched it, and just in my meditation, my awareness of the presence, I felt distinctly as if God had given this to me, that this moment with these incredibly beautiful trees and the silence of the woods and the mountains of Colorado, just sitting there in awe. And I remember for the first time in my life in a prayer, I was like, really? Really, you did all of this for me? And I sat there and tried to accept that and tried to open to that notion that this beauty, this moment, all that I was experiencing was from God. And God was doing it for me, for my own amazement, for my own wonder. And what a beautiful, beautiful sense of intimacy comes out of that. If you can take this moment, any moment, experience everything in the moment, try and open yourself at this moment to everything experienceable, and understand this perspective, this idea that God is your devotee. God loves you. And this is his offering to you, his worship of himself in you. And if you can start seeing the world that way, you'll be tripping over love bugs left and right. It'll be an amazing experience for you. God is my devotee and did all of this for me. Questioner, is there no God apart from you? Maharaj, how can there be? I am is the root. God is the tree. Whom am I to worship and what for? This is that notion that, in our minds, the duality that we experience in the world is because of the duality of our mind. We think and we listen. We become two people in our mind. And so we assume the thinker and the listener are two different people. And that voice that comes for some folks, countering what you're doing, or, thinking about what you're doing. These conversations of thought, oh, let me think about that for a second, really don't make any sense if you've contemplated what's going on there. What are you going to think that you don't already know? And if you don't think you already knew it, then how do you know when you're right? Right? So there's this this is that we create this own veil even within our own mind to create our personality, to watch our actions and adjust them and present differently, to step onto the stage, as it were, to perform our life to the world, which is what's really happening here. But how can that be? The isness, there's only one person in you. And the more you realize this, the easier it is to overcome your vices, your wrong thinking, because wrong thinking always causes an argument in the mind. And that argument in the mind just simply is you simply being confused about who you are. You are one. There's no argument in your mind. Do the one you know is right. You always know which one you should do. It's not until you apply the ignore of ignorance. It's not till you apply the ignore, meaning ignoring what you know to be right, in order to choose what is more pleasant in the moment for yourself. But if you're honest, before that conversation happens, before you have to break into the arguer and the arguee, at that moment, if you stop that argument, if you stop that break from happening by saying stop, there's one person here, and that one person knows what is right, and there is no one to argue with it. Let it be. And you heal that rift, you heal that duality in yourself. And so this is that knowledge that God and you are one. You come of the same root, the I am, isness. If we're not there, if we still have that duality, which of course we do, we wouldn't be doing a Zoom meeting if we didn't, is that it's just to become aware of that. Watch, we're not making something up. We're not learning something. We're unlearning a wrong perspective. So watch, see, when you find yourself breaking into two people in your mind, stop it. Remind yourself, there's one here, and that one knows what is right. Don't let it apply the ignore from ignorance and carry you into an argument where you become two people, in which the wrong sense of I wins. The one that's got a particular need for a particular pleasure or a particular observation or a particular whatever. Don't let that one win. And if you don't let that one win, the mind will normally stay calm. The mind won't be disturbed. The mind gets disturbed when you choose the wrong I to identify with, the wrong attribute to identify with. Then the mind gets befuddled and has to come up with reasons and excuses and explanations and definitions and all manners of things. Because of those arguments, we become genders, we become, sexualities, we become types of people, all of those particulars, and we forget human. We forget love and wisdom. The questioner says, are you the devotee or the object of devotion? Maharaj, I am neither. I am devotion itself. Here it is. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. I love it when I catch in writing a thought that's occurred, but I couldn't I couldn't verify it. And here it is. This is the verification of that notion that in your inner devotion, when you're in that shrine of your heart, right? I've mentioned this before, but because it's right here, now we've got it from an enlightened soul here, that relationship, you've got your concept of God, your concept of Thakur, your concept of Jesus. That's your object of devotion. And then you've got your very partial, very ignorant sense of you, who you are. So you've got an incomplete understanding of God that you're worshiping, and you've got a wrong understanding of yourself that is worshiping, and you have a devotion connecting the two of you, these two concepts in your mind. And so as we sit there in the shrine of the heart with this inadequate concept of God and this inadequate concept of self, worshiping each other, it's not that one of them merges into the other. Not what we expect in that scenario is that we merge into our Ishta, as it were, that we become our image of Thakur. But that's not how that is. What happens is that this worship that's going on, as your understanding of the divine grows, changes, expands, and your sense of self minimizes and minimizes and minimizes, it's the love of that worship, of that relationship between the two of you that was actually the real thing. And you both dissolve into that devotion, into that love. So it is the love that exists between you and your chosen ideal that is actually the truth, that is actually the one unchangeable thing. And so here he says it. His question, are you a devotee or the object of devotion? I am neither. I am the devotion itself. You see, you are love. You are the love that grows between the self and the Ishta, Interesting. A beautiful thing that love ever expansive. It's the infinite. The two ignorances, which are the compartmentalizing of God into an objectified self, being, and you and your limiting the reach of God and fencing off a little ego realm for you to run, those will never be truth. And you don't want to be absorbed into either one of them because both of them are inadequate. But the love that forms as this self absorbs, has faith in, and understands the nature of divinity, of God, then that love becomes overwhelming before too long for the sincere seeker. And that is what absorbs you. That is the cord that binds the oneness of all things. It's that love. All right. Questioner says, there's not enough
I have a
devotion.
question.
Yes.
I'll put on the camera. So, in terms of jnana, then one would say that that you, being the individual, especially Advaita, are an appearance, and the Brahman itself, not at this point in time, which is only a concept, but the knowing of the I am, that knowing itself is the same kind of the loving, the devotion. Would that be equitable to say? So
Yeah.
the light, the illumination with which this world is projected, or I am, I see the body in the world, that knowing itself is what same as the devotion.
Okay. Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I think that in the Gyani world, Gyanic perspective, God is the noun of love and the noun of wisdom, right? He's not loving you. He's not knowing anything. He is the knowledge. He is the love itself. And so instead of having an active devotion where God is loving you and you're loving God in return, it's more the essence of you knowing love itself. That's the knowledge. Your knowledge is actually knowing love itself, which is the oneness. Oneness and love are the same.
Right.
And so it produces in you the same sensation. It plucks that verb of love that you are. You are the active component. You are the Shakti, as long as your identity is in the changing. You are the Shakti. And so that noun resonates with that chord of love that is yourself. And hearing that would be what the bhakti would call devotion, but what the Gyani would just be a knowing But it's a knowing of what? It's a knowing of pure love. It's a knowing of unconditioned love.
Right.
As the nature, not as the actor of things.
Yeah, as the substance itself.
Right.
Right.
Yes, the substrate of all.
Thank you.
Truly. So the questioner, there is not enough devotion in the world. Maharaj, you are always after the improvement of the world. Do you really believe that the world is waiting for you to be saved? This is a great point of view here. My first question, the absurdity of this idea of needing to change the world. If you think for even a split second about the hubris, the pride that's necessary to make a statement like that, oh, there's not enough devotion in the world. What do you know about how much devotion is in the world? Write down all of the people that you have ever met. That's your subtotal of your world. Now put that number, whatever it is, up to next to 7 billion as the population of the world, and say, what in the world do you know about the amount of devotion in the world? You know nothing of it. You know, oh, I hate what's going on in Israel. What do you know about going on in Israel? You know what some talking heads on the 5 o'clock news are saying about something going on in Israel, but what do you know about it? You know, so anything that involves the world needs to change should instantly be shriveled up into a raisin and pitched by your thumb into the ocean of unawareness and dismantled completely, right? And get about the business of understanding you are your world. And if your world needs changing, change it. But understand it's not the world, right? The world is ever perfect. God is everywhere present, always perfect. And so if your world needs changing, how does that happen? By you exuding your nature of pure love and pure wisdom in this moment consistently. That's how your world needs to change. And that is the height of what you can do to change the world. That's the very best. And it's all that is required, because your world will in fact change. You know, it will mirror that. All right. Very good. Let me turn off the recording.